I saved a lot of money, and I learned a lot by grazing pigs on cover crops this year. I'm Rob from Dowdle Family Farms, and I'm on this mission to grow more of our livestock feed on our farm, especially for our pigs to reduce our grain costs. It's currently fall, and right now, as you can tell, we've got pigs in the woods right now. They're eating lots of acorns or acorns for people who are not as southernly sophisticated as I am. During the spring of the year, we often have a lot of clover and many other cool season crops that have overwintered, and the pigs can graze on them as well. Cool season cover crops can be wildly nutritious for pigs. Things like clovers, brassicas, other legumes. In my area in North Mississippi, they grow really well over winter. But the warm season cover crops that grow so well in our area that are drought resistant, they don't do a very good job of providing a lot of nutrition for growing pigs like these little Berkshires and Hampshires right here behind me. The problem is that the warm season cover crops tend to be a little bit coarser. They're great livestock feed for ruminants, but for pigs, they just lack the protein and the amino acids that feeder pigs need. They need a lot of concentrated nutrition so that they can grow quickly and grow fast. We grazed two different groups of pigs on our cover crops this year. Primarily, I tested it with our breeders, but we also had about a 6 to 7 week window where I grazed some of our feeder pigs on some cover crops, and they performed really well as well. So first, let's describe the differences between the two groups of pigs. The first group of pigs were our breeder pigs. There were 5 sows and 1 boar. The sows have larger stomachs and they easily get hungry, but they need limited nutrition through much of their pregnancy or they'll gain too much weight and have problems farrowing. So the ideal feeds for sows in much of their pregnancy are bulkier feeds that fill their stomachs while providing limited nutrition. We had 5 sows that were 250 pounds or so, and then 1 boar who was 600 pounds. So when you put those together, we had about 1,700 pounds live weight of pigs in our breeder sets. The second group of pigs were our Mangalitsa feeder pigs. It's not your standard feeder pigs, but feeder pigs need more concentrated feed so that they reach their quick growth potential, especially up to about 100 pounds or so. They just don't have a whole lot of extra room in their stomachs for bulkier foods like live plants. So while they can grow on less nutritious feeds, it'll usually delay their growth. So there's a thin line between saving money for feeder pigs and providing the nutrition they need through the pasture. There were 17 feeder pigs in this group, and they averaged about 75 pounds. And so they needed roughly 3 to 4 pounds of grain a day during the time that they were on this pasture. Let's turn our attention now to the species of cover crops that we're growing for our pigs during the warm season. In Mississippi, the summers are long and hot. So the species that work really well are sorghum sudangrass, cowpeas, buckwheat, pearl millet, sunflowers, chicory, forage soybeans, and many others. In the 2 different paddocks that we had for our pigs, the sows had a sorghum sudangrass, cowpea, buckwheat, pearl millet, sunflower, chicory, and then a few cool season cover crops in their warm season cover crop mix. The feeder pigs had sorghum sudangrass, a forage soybean, and then teosinte. The most nutritious cover crops for pigs in order were the buckwheat, and it doesn't matter whether the buckwheat is in the plant stage, the flowering stage, or if it's already produced hard seed. While the protein level is not very high, only about 14% in the grain in the plant, the lysine levels are really, really high compared to the protein, so it actually doesn't need quite as much crude protein in it. The second most were the cowpeas and the forage soybeans. They had a much higher crude protein but lower lysine levels, and lysine is the limiting amino acid that makes up the crude protein in most pig feeds. There were some brassicas if they were included in the mix, and then the sorghum sudangrass was the least nutritious. Obviously, I'm trying to grow cover crops that will regrow so I don't have to keep planting annuals as the pigs eat and root them up, and by far, the cover crop that regrew the quickest was the sorghum sudangrass, followed by the hybrid pearl millet. We also had pretty good success with the regrowth of the forage soybean and the Chinese red and red ripper cowpeas, but it all depends on how hard you graze those crops. Buckwheat, unfortunately, does not regrow after it's been grazed. However, many times if it goes to hard seed, the pigs miss a lot of the seed, and it'll actually regrow as the other stuff is growing, but it regrows from seed rather than from the plant itself. The other thing I like about these warm season cover crops, that as they regrow, they also help improve the soil health dramatically through their growth. So the warm season cover crops are nutritious for pigs, but they're also improving soil health pretty significantly as well. So now the question is, how many acres of these cover crops do I need for these pigs? On the breeder pigs, again, we're talking about 1,700 pounds of live weight of the pigs, and I found that the ideal paddock size was about 1/3 of an acre for 1 week. At the beginning of the week, they ate the buckwheat first, then the cowpeas, and then they started grazing more of the sorghum sudangrass. I could have left them up there a little bit longer and they would have eaten more of the sorghum sudangrass, but if I did that, I would have to supplement their feed ratios. On 1/3 of an acre for 1 week, I was able to reduce their feed consumption by 80 to 90%, which is very, very significant. On the feeders, I had 1,700 pounds or so of live weight on the feeders. I gave them less than 200 pounds of grain in the 7 weeks that they were grazing those cover crops. They did a pretty decent job of balancing the forage soybean and the sorghum sudangrass, although there was still a good bit of sorghum sudangrass left. If I'd given them more grain while they were eating the sorghum sudangrass, I could have left them there a little bit longer, but it was time to move them on to the woods. If I had planned the paddock plantings for those feeder pigs, I could have increased the amount of time that the pigs were on there or increased the number of pigs. But realistically, I was just growing that cover crop at that point just to improve the soil health, and feeding the pigs was just a benefit. Just remember, those are feeder Mangalitsa pigs, not your standard meat pigs. I would have added more grain if they had been the standard meat pigs, like our Berkshire, Hampshire, or Duroc crosses. How much money did we save by grazing our pigs on warm season cover crops? With our breeder pigs, I ended up saving more than I thought. The sows were a little bit smaller and they needed to add a little bit weight, so they needed about 8 pounds of grain per day per pig. So I reduced my feed cost by about 80%. Short of a long story, I ended up saving about 1 ton of feed, and at $450 a ton, that's $450 on those pigs. On the feeder pigs, I wound up saving about 3,000 pounds of feed, so that's over $600 on those cover crops. So I saved over $1,000 by feeding our cover crops to our pigs. In the overall scheme of things, $1,000 of feed cost for our farm is a lot of money, but it's really just a very small percentage of our feed costs throughout the year. However, by applying some of these things that I've learned, I'm fairly confident that next summer I can save a whole lot more money. Also, I think I can save more money this fall and spring by grazing pigs on our cover crops. But now that I have this information, I can plan my cover crops a little bit better, plan my grazings a little bit better, and should still have good performance. It's Rob from Dowdle Family Farms. Take care. Have a great day.